Hello guys, and welcome to BlackOni's podcast, where we talk about and pretty much selfish rants and also video games. Today I wanted to hop on one video game I'm pretty much hype about. I heard it just came out, lost track of it, and that game is pretty much a Ghost in the Shell First Assault. I'm looking forward to this game basically because, like I said, I'm a huge Ghost in the Shell fan, and I've always loved the games. I had the game that was on PS2. I also had the game. They had another online game. I think it was a self-made game. But I'm a huge fan of the animated series, the one that came out 20 years ago that they're actually redoing the actual movie off of. Now, that one I truly do enjoy. But like I said, I haven't seen the movie yet, so I'll definitely come back with you with my, comments on that one. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of Ghost in the Shell. I've always been a huge fan. Like I said, Major kind of reminds me of the chick off of Aliens, the main chick who's been in like almost every Aliens movie. I've always enjoyed Major. The next person besides that is pretty much the Colonel. I've always liked him because he seems like the father figure of the group. That's one thing I really do like about him. Besides that, like I said, for the most part, I really do enjoy Ghost in the Shell. Ghost in the Shell has always been one of my favorite things. I've always loved animes where people are, things seem to be one way, but they're really not. They're another completely different from what we expect them to be in the first place. Another way of, looking at that, or I guess assuming what that is if you can remember an anime that had came out a while back, and it was called Metropolis. A lot of people probably don't remember Metropolis, but Metropolis was of this little boy who was, we know him because we're the observers of the movie, but we know that he's a robot, but the children around him don't know that he is a cyborg, not a cyborg, an android. They don't know that he's an android. And I just think that that's insane. That's always been one of my biggest concepts. Androids existing in the same world with humans without there being a violent outbreak or anything like Skynet. Once again, I don't know what it is, what my sickness is between androids, but I've loved androids forever and a day. Like I said, I love Terminator. Like I said, forever and ever will be. My favorite robot will be the T90, or the T80, either or. But I've always loved Terminator. I've always loved the concept. Arnold Schwarzenegger has always made that one of my favorite movies. And like I said, I enjoy that. I think it's something with them possessing a human soul, them at times when they possess, feelings. And like I said, I love the new Terminator they came out with, where, Arnold Schwarzenegger's older. He ends up fighting his younger self and all of that stuff. And he ends up defeating it. Then he has to end up actually fighting John Connor himself. It took 20 years for something that great to happen. So like I said, I liked it. Skynet, regardless on how many times you try to put Skynet down, you don't kill Skynet. You only can delay it. For Terminator fans out there who will understand that. But yeah, I've always had a huge enjoyment of, cyborgs for a long time. I've had a huge enjoyment for androids. Like I said, for one thing, a lot of people may not understand is that Major in Ghost in the Shell is a cyborg. She was once human turned machine. She still possesses a human brain and all of that. But if you actually sit down and watch the very first Ghost in the Shell movie, where she actually ended up, pretty much with the new movie that they're doing is based off of, it seems like it's going to be word from word exactly the same. I'm not 100% sure. It may or may not be. But the one thing I really look forward to with this one is seeing how the turnout is going to be in it, because she ends up connecting and linking up with a supercomputer that changes her whole, concept. She changes herself. Her mind changes. So she's not the same Major that you would see at the very beginning of the movie. She changes completely. It's a 180. She's not the same person ever again after that. She's able to do more things than a normal cyborg is able to do. Like she does hacking and stuff like that, but she goes in deep. And I've always wanted to know the child that is always talked of and all of that. I've always wanted to know, will she ever go up against that? That's been one of my biggest things from seeing that movie. Literally, it's been 20 years since Ghost in the Shell. A little bit, like I said, probably 21 years now. But it's been over 21 years since Ghost in the Shell has been out. They released the game. It's out on Steam right now. It's called Ghost in the Shell First Assault. And like I said, I'm looking forward to playing that game. I'm looking forward to doing YouTube things on it. But like I said, guys, I would truly appreciate it if you guys could be patient with me. There's a lot of things going on in my life right now that I have to take care of and do. But like I said, I do enjoy doing podcasts. It's just going to take me a little bit longer. With that being said, like I said, I enjoy everything that the comments and all of that. Like I enjoy it all. So like I said, once again, thank you for your time and patience on that. With that being said, let's get back into this. Like I said, if you never played the first Ghost in the Shell game, it's Ghost in the Shell. It came out on PlayStation 2, and like I said, I enjoyed it. It was rumor going around that there was a Ghost in the Shell that came out on the PlayStation 1, but I never played that one. My very first time actually enjoying Ghost in the Shell, a video game of Ghost in the Shell, was Ghost in the Shell on the PS2. And like I said, it wasn't the best game in the world, but it stayed very true to the storyline. Everyone played their part who is in the game. You got to play with Major a lot more than you expected to play with her. But you played with every single character. Everybody had a different part to deal with in Ghost in the Shell. It was a lot of things too. If you beat up a character or something like that, you could hack a character. And I'm wondering, are they going to put the hacking system in this new game, Ghost in the Shell First Assault? I'm looking forward to it. If they do, it'll be awesome because it'll stay true to the actual storyline of Ghost in the Shell, where a lot of people's greatest fear is they've been hacked. A person who hacks you can actually change what you think about life, what you see about life, your existence. Like, all of that can be changed just by somebody simply linking up to you and hacking in false data about your life. Everything about you that you believe is you or keeps you genuine because you believe no one can change that can be changed in that world. And that's one thing I loved about Ghost in the Shell, is that's like a huge fear of having your memory and everything alternated. Not being the same person that you were, changing up completely. 1 second, you're a successful person. Next thing you know, you're a bank robber, in which you believe that you're doing all of this to save your sick child, or, push on and do what you need to do. And like I said, I think that is really, really insane. Once again, putting that out there, that I think is really crazy that you would have to look at that and be like, wow, I can be hacked. I really hope they put that in the game. Like, instead of you being captured or something, when you're like hurt and you're defenseless, you can be hacked. I'm really looking forward to that. And another thing I'm looking forward to is seeing if the original cast member is going to be in there. I know they have the same voice actor for Major. I'm just not sure if they have the same, voice actor for like Ichimura, all of them. Like, yeah, I want to say, I may be saying the name wrong. I apologize on that. But I want to know if they have the exact same voice actors. I'm pretty sure they do. But, when it comes to video games, sometimes it changes up definitely due to time as well. So I'm not 100% sure on that. And I noticed one thing, though, that really much changes up on video games and characters over time. Normally, if you have really, really good voice actors like Broly. Like, Broly has been played by the same person no matter what. Vic Mignogna is an awesome person, all right? Like, he's well known for Broly in the U.S. and is a very, very enjoyed person if you've ever seen him in your life. He's really, really down to earth. But back to what I was saying, though, about video games and stuff like that as well. Strangely enough, I actually do remember Ghost in the Shell being on PS1, and the reason I forgot it is because it wasn't really like a runaround game. It was more of you driving in a tank type thing. I'm not gonna say it's like Twisted Metal. It wasn't like Twisted Metal. It was more like a drive around war machine tank, like I guess like Tiny Tank, if you could say so, where you go in your first person mode, you aim and you shoot, those type of games. And go into first person shooter, but it was more of like a drive around shooter type game. And like I said, being on PS1, I really did it, and I don't really remember like enjoying it too well. I know it had a huge storyline, like all of the games have their huge storylines with hackers and people breaking into certain types of top security that they shouldn't have been in the first place, and you having to figure out what do they know and all this stuff to actually get a hold on them to stop them from doing what they were doing, because most likely it's going to be what they consider a terrorist attack. So with that being said, you have these missions where you have to go find out information and stop whoever's doing it. Similar concept to a lot of things. But like I said, I'm wondering with the game that came out on PS1, the game that came out on PlayStation 2, if I'm not mistaken, I don't believe there was any game that came out on the PS3 that I know of, unless it was Japanese, overseas. I don't remember a Ghost in the Shell being on that system. Now, I know that there's also rumored that this game is also supposed to be out on the PlayStation 4, but I'm not 100% sure. I know that you can get this game out on Steam as Ghost in the Shell: The First Assault. I would tell you, try the game out, leave me a comment if you like it. I know that it is supposed to be free to play, because of it being like a multiplayer game. It's also supposed to be free to play. And but I know it has little missions based off of the actual Ghost in the Shell storyline, so maybe you would like to go out and get those as well. With that being said, like I said, you guys know I'm a huge fan of, like I said, cyborgs and androids. A huge fan. One of my favorite people in Teen Titans is Cyborg, not because he's black, but basically because he has to go through a single struggle every day of, trying to figure out, am I man? Am I machine? How do I embrace this gift? And I'm thankful for the gift. It's a lot of confusion at the beginning of his story. And I remember reading up on him because I was just thinking he was more like a gimmick type character. He was more like kind of like a Android or iPhone type, robot at the time. And like I said, I grew up with him, and I remember watching Justice League and seeing him in Justice League, before USBs were a big thing, and he would stick his hand in the computer, and it just all felt weird. So like I said, I got to understand this character a little bit more, and really, really enjoys his character a lot. So like I said, besides that being said, I really do enjoy androids and robots and all of that stuff. They bring a lot of joy to me no matter what. I'm looking forward to seeing how this Ghost in the Shell game is. I'm also looking forward to seeing if there's new animes or video games that are coming out pretty soon. Once again, like I said, I apologize to everybody about the music part of my podcast. I'm still working on it. I'm trying to get everything together. As soon as that happens, I will actually be playing that back to back. So you guys have nothing to worry about on that. That will be awesome after I get done with it. It's just taking time. Like I said, I do have a job. Yeah, it's an 8-hour job, but it's still a job. And it after I get done with it, you know, I try to set other times up for the rest of my life. All right, you guys have a good one. This is the BlackOni signing out in 3, 2, 1.
This is the BlackOni. I work for mine. That means I make money for time. I'm getting all day. I slave always in doing what I can. I'm making money, getting stacks so I can get myself out of situations. That means debt. I'm killing these chicks. I'm getting everything how I'm doing when I'm getting it like I'm break.